Hey everyone, Michael here. I decided to do a bit of a live hangout tonight, and I have some people that could. One person's going to come on, and they're going to ask some questions, and we may even get some questions from the audience if any show. Anyways, it doesn't look like there's any of the audience right now. It's a bit late, and I did kind of put this at the last minute, but anyways, I think I'll invite our guest over here and let's have some fun. All right, let's see. Now, in the meantime, while we're waiting for her to arrive, just some stuff that I wanted to talk about was I haven't been able to get that video up yet for Craftron, and just kind of still researching some of the planet, and I'm still getting that the girl drawn, one of the Salharians, and it's kind of going a little slow on that. They're actually kind of hard to draw, but hopefully we should have that relatively soon. But yeah, all right. So far, no questions, and we are still waiting for our guest to come up. Now, I guess something else we could talk about is, let's see here, what could we talk about? Okay. One thing we could talk about while we're waiting is for anyone that's really starting out in this kind of line of work, you really like you just take it one day at a time, and that's what you've got to do with that, because like when you first start out in this line of work, you start out with just working with the energy, and you have all the stuff that comes up to where you gotta go through the detox, and you have like all this emotional stuff coming up soon afterwards, that within maybe a week to 2 weeks, and that's what starts to happen to you as you first start out. And then you kind of just start working with yourself as you go along. And what I mean by oh, hello, we got our guest here. How are you, Suchi? Uh, oh, well, I guess we're still waiting. Okay. Let's see what's wrong here. Technical difficulties, I hope you'll forgive. All right. I guess we're still waiting, but anyways, to keep going with what I was on earlier. Oh, okay, she answered. Okay, she's joining back up again. Gotta love technology. Sometimes it really works for you, sometimes it doesn't. Ah, there we are. Now we got her. Come on, come on. Hello? Huh, I guess. Thank God I have her questions if we can't get this working, but anyways, while we're still waiting for her, like, where was I? Oh yeah. Okay. Once you've kind of worked through the blocks and stuff, then you can kind of really start working into like a lot of your abilities and really getting used to your energy body and so on. And a lot of that's uh, there we go. I have no idea what's going on with this tonight. Suchi, can you hear us? Mm. All right. Here's what we're gonna do. Since oh, okay, there we go. You gonna stay now?
Yes, it is 12 p.m.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, that was a bit weird. I didn't know why it kept kicking you out. That was weird.
Yeah, you kicked me out once and then start kicking you out.
Yeah. All right. All right. So we have Suchi here, and what are some of your questions, Suchi? And you can answer follow-up questions with them, but yeah, just go with that. We'll just keep going from
Okay, okay. We're starting with the questions, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so, so many people confuse spirituality with religion. Okay. So I live in the place which has numerous number of religions. You have Hinduism, you have Jainism, you have Christianity, everything. So, how would you make people understand the difference between spirituality and the religion? Although I understand this very well and I can make people understand, but still there are some people who still associate spirituality with religion, which is not the case, right? So,
Yeah.
what will be your answer to them?
My answer to them would be spirituality is working a lot more with yourself rather than, serving a god, an entity, and so on. And you're working with your own spirit to that degree. Because what you've got to understand, especially with psychic work, is they are intertwined, yourself and the psychic abilities. They come as a package deal. You cannot separate the two. So when you start working with the energies within yourself and in your body with, and the detox effects start from what I was talking about earlier before you arrived and everything. What also starts coming up is old past things which are blocks, as you saw in my class when we were together in my
Right.
class. But
Yeah.
here's the thing with that. As you work along every day with not only yourself and not only with your blocks, you also work with the chakras themselves and their minds, because many people think that the chakras are, they're just energy system. They're just kind of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they just think, okay, they're just part of me. No, 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 they're not just part of you. They are part of your whole system. Like, they have their own minds, and you can see evidence of this. For example, like when I feel love or you feel love in your heart, and you have that deep inner knowing, and like something tells you deep in your heart that maybe you need to go for something, it tells you, that's a little bit of that, your own, that mind from that chakra right there. That's a little bit of it, just a little bit of that. And so every day you find yourself working with your own energies and just communicating back and forth between them. And how do blocks fit into the equation? For example, like, imagine for a second, like, okay, for those of you that don't know what blocks are, think of it as a part of yourself that at one time you like had fractured off. And what I mean by that, one of the chakras, minds, fractured off and kind of is off on its own. And this doesn't even have to be one of the 7 chakras. It could be any within the minor, in the shoulders, the arms, the legs, and so on. And so in more details, what a block is, think of like a suppressed piece of yourself. Like, for example, perfect example. All right, let's say you had a boyfriend or girlfriend break up with you. You feel like your heart has been literally torn out of your chest, and if you feel like there's a hole there and like you feel empty, and when that piece of you has been taken out, that has what a block has formed there. That's what that emptiness is. A piece of yourself has literally separated itself off from you and kind of gone on its own here. And that's a defense mechanism because it helps you within that crisis to be able to even just function. Because if it was a part of you during that time, it would be too painful. And it's a very good defense mechanism. So how to answer back to your original question, the difference is you work with your own spirit and working with that every day and understanding it. And that's how I define spirituality. Some people may have a different definition, but that's how I define it. All right.
Okay. So my second question will be, so there are a lot of spiritual beings we read about, we experience, like fairies, like guardian angels. So so I only know these two. What all other spiritual beings are there around us, and how they are different from each other?
Okay, that's a very good one. Okay, there are beings every day that you can run into. And for a lot of people, they're like, especially new psychics, they're really attracted to. And because you're interesting, you're new, and you could find one at any time of the day. But if you're asking for specific ones, like if you go to like any of the churches or anything that has a church of sorts, there will be entities there. Because what many people don't know is like a lot of these entities from religions, yes, they are real. But the thing I want to pose to you is like when you go to join a cause of whatever sort, is it worth it? Because like let's say I go over to like Russia and it's like not everyone likes Russia. And a lot of people see them as the bad guys, but to a lot of their own people, they see it's like we're the good guys from their perspective, and they think a lot of other countries do very stupid decisions. But at the same time, it's like, do they do bad things in the background? Sure, maybe. But yeah. But anyways, back to that question, you will definitely find beings within churches. You can definitely find them in forests, where like, especially more towards the center of the forest, I'll often find kind of a few forest spirits within there. And it's kind of interesting when you find them. You sort of sense a really calm around you once you go in, and it just gets stronger and stronger the further and deeper in you go. And there'll be kind of a definite presence around.
Okay. So my next question would be, so everybody has this idea of God, right? So my idea of God is like it's my own higher self, and I can anytime turn to the God. It's not he or she. So I
Mm-hmm.
can anytime turn to God and just blab it out whatever it's in my heart. I don't actually know whether the God exists or not. I just believe in it. So, how would you explain the existence? I mean, how do you relate spirituality? Do you even relate God with spirituality, or is just the religion thing?
Whew. Pulling out all the big questions today, are we? All right. You're right. There is a higher self within us, and then like there is the God self that is definitely a part of us. But then there's also the soul. And this is what you actually start getting into, like, definitely as you progress further down. And, like, after you've worked with the chakras, you can meet your soul. And then, eventually kind of going into where you're having a much more in-depth contact with the higher self. And all of you kind of starts to merge, so to speak. But since we're pointing to God or maybe a goddess, if you will, there is a force Some of you may have heard of it, called Source. And it's, how to explain that? When you travel through the dimensions, at the very highest point is Source. And how I kind of see it, it's almost kind of like this golden ball of light that is in there. God, trying to explain this with words, that's always fun. But doing, it's not really a being to per se.
Right.
It's more of an intelligence is the best way I can describe it. And when you get there, there is a sense of a huge love and compassion, and most of all, that you feel the above all is understanding between the two of you. And that's what makes it the most worthwhile going through that. It's like you get to feel that understanding and that compassion. And you know, you could ask a question, but a lot of times for your own development, you need to discover things on its own. It's going to give you hints, but it's not going to serve it to you on a silver platter.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with that because you get the answers in many ways. Whenever I have a question, I just throw it out, and it gives me answers in some other form. Maybe somebody going on the road through a situation or something, I can relate to it. I agree with you on this part completely.
Mm-hmm.
So, moving on to our next question. So there is a karmic law, right? I think most of the people believe in it, but we have projected karma in a very negative way, right? So it's basically if you do bad, it will come to you, but we never say that if you do good, then also it will give back to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's your views on that karmic law?
Oh, the karmic law. That's the one that that's I feel like I would get into a huge debate about that one, but I'll try to answer it best I can. And not everyone's going to agree with me. But karma is like let's first address the bad here. Like let's say somebody commits suicide, and you know, some people can argue it's a reset button and, you know, you come back or whatever. But, but when you come back, it's like you didn't learn all the lessons that you needed to. Yeah. And at the same time, you have to come back and relearn, get all those lessons learned. And so, in essence, it's like you really didn't gain anything. Yeah, some people view it as a reset button. I don't. It's kind of like it's like you have all this work and then you just kind of just said, nope, I'm not gonna go do it. And that's just my perspective on it. Some people may not agree with me on that, but that's for that because you can never truly get away from the stuff that you have to learn. You can never get away from that. And you are accountable for that. And so when you come to Earth, you have kind of like a thing where it's like, okay, this is kind of my life mission here, and this is what I'm going to do. But as if you're not achieving those goals, it's time you may have to come back and say, hey, I need to come fix this. And in some cases, you know, you may wait on a whole life before that comes back around, but eventually that does come back around. Because sometimes, like, you know, you have like a terrible, terrible thing happen to you. You were burned at the stake or something, or you had all your family die, and in great grief, you killed yourself or something. You may go through what's called a buffer life. And buffer lives are kind of like, I go in and you kind of live a nice life, you know, just to help heal from that last one. And, or it could even be a preparatory one where, you know, nothing bad has happened at all. You've had a lot of good things go on, but In this one, you need to kind of just prep for the big one that's going to come up. And so let's talk about good karma here. Good karma. Good karma is when you help others out truly, you are not only progressing yourself and helping like yourself move forward, and that in turn is going to let your higher self come in and your soul to help further you even more, and it's going to give you tools and knowledge to help you to go forward. But if you harm other people, you've also harmed yourself in that way, because we are all connected in a way from that source, that God. And I want to kind of introduce to something to you here. And this is how things kind of go into multidimensionality a little bit within the chakras themselves. And I mentioned this earlier with how the there's different minds within each of the chakras. That is how multidimensionality works. It's like your mind and consciousness exists at different levels. Like right now you're more in kind of in the conscious self, or if you have become good at it, you can think within each of the chakras and you can examine the minds of each of them. So going down this road, oh, man, I lost my train of thought. But anyways, with multidimensionality, you have all these different aspects, and when all of those come into alignment, it's like, man, I've totally lost my train of thought where I was going with that. But anyways, with good karma, what you do, oh, that's where I was going, yes. All right, with that multidimensionality, you have all these chakras and all those mindsets. But there is a paradox I want to introduce you to. You are and you are not. Or I am and I am not. When we think of ourselves here, like, right, me here, I am myself and I am not myself. And what does that mean? Like, for example, like, I'm just a piece of myself that is my higher self, I could say. But I also am me. That is part of my higher self. There's a paradox right there where it's like, I am, but I am not. And so that connectedness, like, is like, there is a connection there, but it's also separate. So when you go and do something bad to someone, it does affect you. Even though you are separated, it still affects you. And it's the same way with blocks even, because like, even though they're split off from you and they've kind of become their own little deal here and are just frozen in time, as even to the point where they even become their own entity within yourself. This is why they call, your own demons, for example. And so when you have that split and that comes off, it's like, oh dear, it's like it's become its own entity. And so, like, but it's still connected to you. And it's like, even though it's become very separate at that point, it's still connected to you. And so when it comes back, it's like a piece or a hole was filled because it came back into your being. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
And
right.
I'm sorry if that was a very long-winded, answer, but that's how I can best explain it.
Yes, so I understand these are not yes and no questions. So if in order to understand, there has to be a story behind it.
Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah. So my next question would be how your life changed once you started spiritual journey of yours. So how were you before and how are you now? I mean, I want to understand the before and after effect on you of the spirituality.
Okay. So before Okay, I was very LDS. I was very religious. I went to church, but I always kind of felt like there was something missing in my life, where it's like there kind of lay something just beyond. And I was probably the most spiritual of my family, and you know, you can say spiritual in a religious sense, and at that point I was, but I thought about things very carefully, and I thought about each and everything. I read the scriptures, I read the Bible, I read the Book of Mormon, and I went to church every Sunday, I went to the temple and everything. But I always kind of felt like there was something more, something just a little bit beyond that. And when you go into spirituality, as I said before, and you go into that energy work area, the two with psychic abilities and everything else, they are totally intertwined. You can't get away from them, period. And if you try to, it can drive you insane. It can literally drive you crazy because what's happening, and excuse me, let me erase the board here. Here's what's happening to you energetically. Okay, so we have a person here, all right? Okay, and let's see, we'll draw a really quick one. Hey, I actually got pretty good at this. Oh, he has a weird boot. But anyways, we got our person here. All right, let's say we have our person here. All right, do we have another marker? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Sweet. Okay. Let's say right here is a block, or a couple of them here. It's like you've got all these little fractures or pieces of yourself that are fractured all over the place. And while they're a part of you, they're still kind of separated. And so what happens as all of this new energy begins to flow through your system, it begins to disturb these because they kind of put themselves into almost like a shell of sorts. And when you do that, it kind of strips that shell away to where the block is exposed and they start coming out of dormancy. And this is kind of where the ascension process comes in because it's like everything's trying to come back together and trying to come back into, I guess I'm going to put the term here, oneness. And that's what oneness is. It's you're literally putting everything back together. You follow on that?
Yeah.
And that's exciting. That's very exciting because like as you come back together, it's like you feel more whole, you feel more warm, you understand more, and you feel like you're more yourself than you ever have been, maybe even since you were a child. And a lot of people describe like they had amazing abilities as a child, but because we become so fractured, that's the problem that we face. Is like all that energy is no longer flowing through our system. We can't sense it really anymore because it's like we have so little of it flowing through us. It's kind of like we're almost half dead, and operating on half dead is not great. I mean, as children, we have a lot more of that source and godlike energy flowing through us, and we can still have that, but it's like if we're so fractured and blocked, that's not going to happen very easily. And what happens to one chakra? So like let's say I have let's say the third eye is blocked. All right. Let's say I'm a reader and I get like I have something terrible happen to me and my sense of the world has been altered. That is going to affect the third eye. And in case in point, sure, I'm able to sense emotions of others and be able to read those people, but what will happen is the third eye, what does it give you? What does it really give you? It gives you inner sight and information and understanding about that information. So with all this in mind, it's like all those pieces, like they start coming back together and you feel literally much more whole. And like that more than anything is worth it. I mean, after you get with all the chakras, you meet your soul, and then things get really crazy because then the veil gets stripped from your mind. You start to remember like all the memories of before, past lives. And even like if you're a starseed, you may even remember those. But let me tell you something. Getting to that point is difficult, and I mean really difficult. And here's why. When you have to like go and look at each of these chakras and each of these parts of yourself, these pieces of yourself, when you can't just think of them as chakras anymore, they are literally pieces of yourselves. And like even after you've worked with the blocks, you have to work with the minds of the chakra to really start to understand yourself. And that's where all the minds of things start to come together. And then you can discover your soul. And that's where the memories are located. And because when you're born, you kind of come in and you kind of anchor to the mother, and you kind of really shrink down and to a point where it's like really, really compressed. And in the center of that is the soul. There's kind of almost like a little light around. I can actually draw a little picture for you. I wish I had my notebook. I could actually have drawn a full picture of it. All right. So let's see here. What should we do? Aha. Okay. So here's the soul, and it kind of radiates out some light here. And then out here, we kind of have sort of this darkness, if you will. And when I say darkness, I don't mean bad per se, but just more, these are a lot of your memories that have been hidden from past lives and everything, because it's all been compressed in here. And to find that, you have to be very good at even looking through those chakras in those minds. So even trying to get here to this point and understanding what you're finding here, you have to have that down. Otherwise, nope, you're not going to find it. And you have to become very well acquainted with the soul as well for this to wholly work. But there is a problem if you don't work with all the blocks. Because in here, if you're not experienced with dealing with those blocks, in here contains all of the most worst of your blocks. Like the worst of the worst. That can literally terrify the pants off of you. And that's what you've got to face when you go in there. So when you go in there, you have to have that love and compassion and that acquaintedness with the soul to really begin to even work with some of those. And then you can really start revealing all the memories in there. But yeah, that's what it's sort of been like for me, like the before and after. But it's like, yeah, I kind of did always have a sense that there always was something more. But then once I got to here, it's like, there's so much more. It's like, and it just keeps going. It doesn't stop. All right. I think that's enough for that. I don't want to dump an entire book on you.
So yeah, so I think that's got, yeah, one last question from me. Yeah. So we say that your soul never dies, right? But how do we explain death in terms of spirituality? Not the death of your physical body, but when we call that something has died, in terms of spirituality, what will it mean? How can we relate to it?
All right. And before I answer this question, those of you that are watching, you can start putting questions over in the Q&A, and after I'm done with this question, I will answer those in the Q&A. All right, so death. Oh, the lovely term, death. Okay, I will admit, it's kind of a scary thing for a lot of people because you don't know what's coming next, and especially for those that, okay, I don't want to scare anybody, but for those that are in religions, yes, you do go on to those heavens or wherever you were going, but I want to let you know that each of those places, I've been to them, and they are domains of that spirit or God or whoever you are serving, and you go there, yeah. But there is another path And that path is like when you wake up, it's like don't go quite into that tunnel of light yet. Don't go in just yet. Let yourself kind of wake up and remember for a second, because when you kind of come out of it, it's kind of like when you first wake up, like from a long nap, or when you're sleeping, you're just like, you're really groggy and you're like, ah. It kind of takes a second for you to come to and remember. So it's like, okay, I remember now. And it's like, now where do I go? It's like, now you can go and rejoin the higher self. And here's what's amazing about the amnesia and why we have that amnesia. It is actually really brilliant, like really brilliant. Okay, I want you to imagine something. Okay, you have like a really, let's say this is you. Okay, let's say that's you. Okay, and let's say this is like, let's say the higher self. All right. Okay. Now, okay, let's actually draw. Can I make this fit? Yeah, okay. Okay, higher self. Okay, and you. All right. So you have these two identities here, or multi-dimensional identities, to be more precise. And when these rejoin together, you have a merging of identities. It's kind of like, it's like, you know, when you have a block, it's like, okay, I brought it back, and now I have a huge part of myself, and it's back. But imagine for a second if that was learning the entire time while you were gone, and it comes back, and yes, while you're still connected that entire time while they're gone, and it has an awareness of you, when that reintegrates, it's like that merging of the two. And of course, whatever was in here is purified from that time, but they merge between the two. And that is what is so amazing about death. It's like, well, it's not that really that bad. It's just like, hey, we come back. And you know, you can think like, well, that kind of seems a little weird, but I'm me. And it's like, yeah, you are. You totally are. But let me give you something. It's like that, so you don't feel like you've lost all sense of like individuality or like who I am as a person. Let me give you some hope for that. When you come here to Earth, and what begins to happen, and you know, this isn't for like, I'm not going to go into the cases where someone's crazy or there's something physically wrong with their vessel to where they get really messed up in the head. That's something else entirely. But for the raw majority, for those that are healthy individuals that do come in, or even those that, you know, have some disabilities with autism and such, and they have some higher energies that come in, and let's say they come in or whatever, but there still has to be that soul here that is very much you. It's still you. And so as the chakras form, think of it as like it's branching off into a personality. You're still very much you in that sort of light. You're just a version that has been shaped by the experiences of this world. But you still gave yourselves hints when you came to this earth. That's why a lot of us kind of like will feel like, I feel like there's something more. There's something deep within me that's yearning for that. And that's that saying, hey, go look at this. This is something you need. And with all that said, it's like, so yeah, it's like, you really haven't lost much. Not at all. You're still going to be that same consciousness. And whether you realize it or not, you're still very much part of the higher self and that consciousness and that thinking within it, even if you're not very aware of it. So it's still there, whether regardless. And it's just kind of like, for example, I'm triggered by one of my blocks. It's still there. It's very much a part of me. And it's me. It's very much me. But it's like that's still me. I'm not just going back into this collective soup. It kind of seems like I don't know what this is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's it from my side. So
Okay. And it doesn't look like there's
thanks for
it doesn't look like there's any questions for now. Is there any other questions you wanted to ask while we see if there's anyone that's going to type up a question in the Q&A there?
Okay. So so let me think. So these were all in my mind. So yeah. So during one of the classes when we speak, when I was one of your students. So during that, I asked you that energy blocks ascend to your dreams as well. So if we start initially when we start doing meditation or we start balancing out chakras, these energy blocks are disturbed and they kind of gets into your head, telling you things like, for the other time I asked you about that this thing came into my dream and this is what I've been thinking, right?
Yeah.
So it eventually stops, right? So I just want to ask that one need not to be scared of all of these things, right?
Um,
Once you start meditating, right?
so like it was coming up to you in your dreams and it was kind of scary and everything.
It wasn't scary though, but it was something I never wanted to relive.
Okay.
Okay, the memories I never wanted to relive, so I was reliving the memories all over again.
Yeah. Okay. What you're experiencing is blocks. They when they live in an area, like what's happened is like they are literally frozen in time of where um, event A happened, and they're in that continuous loop going over and over and over and over and over, and it never stops. It never stops until it comes back, and they're just living in that continuous cycle. That sounds like hell, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so what happens is like if left alone for a long period of time, those blocks can be very resentful. And when they do finally come out and you're bringing them out, they can be a little kind of resentful after all this time that you've kind of ignored them and just said, hey,
Right.
we're going to kind of go over there. So
Yes.
yeah, and to get your attention, what they'll try to do is they'll try to put something that is going to get your attention, like whether it's something scary or something that was very painful, and you're going to pay attention when you see that thing. You're like, okay, you have my attention now.
Mhm.
And the more this goes on, and the less you pay attention to it, especially when you're, starting out, if you don't pay attention to this thing's going to get louder and louder and louder. So it's going to just keep growing and like to the point where it literally can drive a person insane. Because the more energy and the more further you try to progress yourself without working with the blocks, the more louder these become. Because they're still they want to rejoin and they want to be healed, but but in that same sense, they are in such pain and they don't trust you. And so when you, as yourself as a being, are very much at war with yourself, you can see how that would quickly turn ugly.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not on the level of fractured personalities per se, but there is very much a piece of you within that does like clamor for attention. Yeah. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Did you have any more? It doesn't look like there's any Q&A
No.
questions.
No. I don't have any more questions.
All right. Well, that ends the broadcast. Thank you everyone for watching. Have a pleasant day.
Same to you. Thanks, Michael, for answering my questions. Have a nice night. Bye.
Bye.